CEBRadio, DZEM 954, ang tinig ng katotohanan, himpilan ng Iglesia ni Cristo, sumasahimpapawid mula sa Quezon City.
Let's open our devices and listen now. Let's have some fun and this is how. As we have our INC radio podcast playing, we will have so much fun listening. INC Radio Podcast, we're here today.
Hello, podcast family, and welcome to the 5th episode of our season's The Balance Blueprint Part 1. And you're tuning into INCRadio Podcast, the podcast that resonates with you. I'm one of your hosts, LJ.
And Angelica, and this episode is a continuation of our season, The Balance Blueprint Part 1, which focuses on topics that involve balancing your personal, social, and academic life, because balance is a practice that is essential to develop, especially at a young age. Last week, we talked about digital detox, which was about the different ways to limit our screen time to maintain a healthy life balance, especially as students. And that plays well into today's episode topic, which is reconstructing your academic equilibrium, where we will put together all the knowledge that we've learned from each other these past few episodes, and also discuss ways that we can regain balance or stability in our academic lives, especially after a period of stress or burnout.
That's right. But of course, we want our podcast family to join in on our conversation too. So let's segue to our podcast question for today at Angelica. And as always, for all of our live viewers, please feel free to leave your answers in the live chat, wherever it may be on your screen, here. And for those who will be viewing our lovely episode after it has aired, please feel free to also share with us your response to our question at podcast@incradio.net. Ayun nga. So what is our podcast question for today? So it's, how do you maintain your academic equilibrium? So now, before we head off to our main discussion, we'd like to also give our special thanks to Ka Angelo Iranio V. Manalo, our CEBSI president and CEO. And most of all, we would like to thank our dearest executive minister, Ka Eduardo V. Manalo. We love you both so much po. Ayan. So again, our podcast question of today is, how do you maintain your academic equilibrium? Ayon, at Angelica.
Now, when we're talking about academic equilibrium, our viewers might not be familiar with this terminology. So I think our first question to really answer is, what does academic equilibrium mean to you, and what are its key characteristics? Let's start off with you.
Yeah, so for me, well, when you hear the word, I guess just equilibrium, just in general, right? It means balance, right? So academic balance. So for me, one of the things, one of the key characteristics for me, with that is actually having healthy, healthy, studying skills. Is one of the key characteristics of, for me, what academic equilibrium means. Ikaw?
I think for me, when I'm thinking of academic balance, I kind of associate with academics, but also everything else outside of academics, because I think that your life can't just be fully academic. You have other parts of your life too. And so in order to make sure that you're taking care of that academic side, it's important to take care of your personal well-being and even your personal relationships in order to maintain that academic equilibrium, because those aspects of our lives are all what supports us, even when it comes to our academic passions. And so when I'm thinking of academic equilibrium, I'm thinking of really being able to balance all of your responsibilities, not just academically, but everything else outside of that that supports that. One of the things I wanted to talk about is, for key characteristics, when I am trying to identify this, like what I view as academic equilibrium, one of the indicators that I see is mental health. It's your emotional well-being and also your physical health as well, because sometimes when things are off balance, we might be sleep deprived or stressed out, and so those are all indicators that we might be off our equilibrium. And I think another thing is like what I mentioned, how academic equilibrium might also refer to the different parts of our lives. A support system is also a key
Mm-hmm.
characteristic of academic equilibrium to me. So, our friends, our families, or even maybe academic or career mentors that we have that we rely on for support when it comes to our academics.
Exactly. And that basically almost kind of tapers us to our next question is why is it important to maintain balance in your academic life? So right, at Angelica already went over, our friends and family, having rest, preventing those burnt outs and stuff. We'll kind of tap into burnouts a little bit later in our topic discussion. But I think that's a really good those are really, really good points. And if
Mhm.
anything, it's important for us to also have that or to maintain that balance is also just for longevity of our academic life, right?
Mm,
Some of us might be in school for a short amount of time and some of us may be in school for a long periods of time, right? And it's nice to be able to find your balance early on in your academic life versus later on in your academic life. Although
right.
either way, I feel like even just having a balanced academic life also taps into just your outside of things, like what you said, right? Outside of things and how we balance things in the real world as well, right? And and I like that you pointed out, mental health, having a good support system. Those are things that also um, really helps us to be able to find that academic life balance, and also it's for long-term success as well, right?
Right.
And yeah, you'll have if you have sustainable habits or if you have good and strong habits that you also figure out in the beginning of your academic life, it'll definitely taper off to having that good balance all throughout your school.
Mhm.
Is there anything else you kind of wanted to add to that as well, Angelica?
Yeah, just to add to that point, I think one of the things also that's really important to note is that your studies are preparing you for your future career. And so
Mm-hmm.
being able to have that skill of balancing your academics and everything else that goes on in your life is a skill that can translate off to when you are actually working full time in your career. When you are, let's just say, really getting into adulting, those are all really
Mm-hmm.
important skills that we can develop as students that translate into skills that we need when it comes to having full responsibilities, especially as adults. And one of the things that I also wanted to add is I think at the LJ, you were a student at one point as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, we enter the semester with so much energy, so much excitement, and
I
that
agree.
energy kind of dies down towards the middle or end of the semester, or once we hit exam season, we might feel burnout or we might be less motivated. And so it's important to maintain a balance so that we maintain that passion that we have for our studies, that excitement. And that's why it's really important because, like what you said, it's for long term academic success. So that way, we're not putting all of our energy all at once in the beginning. We're making sure that we're maintaining that all throughout our studies. So that way, we can make sure we're passionate about what we're studying, but also we're putting forth our best efforts all throughout our studies.
I like that. And also, right, it a lot of it also is building our life skills, right? Like going to school and having academic balance or finding that balance in your academic life. Exactly what Angelica says, right? It prepares us for the real world. Because out there in the real world, when we have a job, right, we're maintaining and we're also learning other responsibilities. We're training for certain skills that you can use and also be able to it also helps open up doors afterwards, right?
Right.
And also, having self-discipline and also knowing which one and which things to prioritize are what's preparing you for that outside reality of what you're going to face outside of your academics. And even in our next question is how do you know when your academic life is out of balance? And so we kind of talked about why it's important to maintain that balance, how do we maintain that balance? But ikaw at Angelica, like how do you know when you're kind of, you know, out of whack, I guess, when
Yeah.
it comes to
So
your yeah.
I think personally for me, especially not just as students, but also as officers, we have a lot on our plate. And you're constantly in this cycle where you have to understand where your priorities lie and you have to understand how to manage your schedule. And so definitely I know that my academic life is out of balance when I feel overwhelmed, but
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed to the extent where I can't keep up with anything. There's
Mm-hmm.
differences in being overwhelmed. Sometimes you feel overwhelmed, but you can still be productive. You know you have a lot to
Mm-hmm.
do, but you're still fully functioning. But when you kind of lose that part of you where you're overwhelmed to the extent where you can't get anything done, that's really like one of my indicators that my academic life is out of balance. And another thing, like what I mentioned, mental and also physical health, just to add on to that, when it comes to self-care, there are instances I know that college students are guilty of this where you replace your meal for coffee or an energy drink.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a meal. So I think for me, lack
Or
of
even a
self-care,
granola bar, you can't call that a meal.
yeah, that's not a meal either. Yeah. So I know that my academic life is out of balance when my dinner is like an iced coffee.
Mm-hmm.
First of all,
Like
that's
the appetite is gone, right?
yeah, so
And
you're still
for for
out.
the both of us who love food, I think that's what number one indicator that if you're out of whack, you don't
You
feel an
like all of a
appetite.
sudden just don't wanna eat. I think for me it's not that I don't wanna eat, it's more like I feel like I don't have enough time to eat
Time,
because I'm
yeah.
so stressed out.
Like it's
And
like
so
where do I find the time to eat? Like do I eat while I'm doing this at the same time? It's like no, you can't, right?
mhm. And I think another thing to point out too is that for our college students that might be dorming or living away from home, it's really important to have this self-discipline because your parents are not there to cook food for you. So it's really important that we maintain caring for ourselves and caring for our physical health. And so for me, lack of self-care is one of those indicators that my life is out of balance. How about you, Adele?
I think mine was, you mentioned that I was a student. I'm not a student at the moment, but I was just about a year ago. Actually, it was my first time being in university, and I know one of the things that I was struggling with was because at the same time I was a working student. So on top of me being in first year university and the fact that I was working full time at the same time is a lot, right? It can take
Right,
like what you said, a mental and a physical toll in your body. I think for me, knowing that I was kind of not that I was feeling overwhelmed or out of balance was that I was emotionally I was always irritable, right? I was always annoyed or even dreading anything, schoolwork, whether it's academic or it's my job, like going, like dreading to go to work
mhm,
because I feel like I still have so many other things that I have to do for school at the same time. And even I think number one for me was lack of motivation, right? Again, like, when you feel like you don't want to do anything, you feel like I would rather procrastinate or I feel very unmotivated to do anything, was one of for me was one of the key indicators that I was out of balance.
right. And I think like that period of maybe when your motivation was diminished, it's something that like we talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
Because I
Mm-hmm.
remember when you were just telling the team, "Oh, I'm gonna go back to school," and we were all so excited, and you were so excited for uni, and then the realities of being a college student hit us sometimes, and so that's why
Yeah.
it's important that we learn how to balance things, so that way we can still stay motivated even up until the end of our studies. Um, just like what we talked about, knowing or determining the indicators of when our academic life is out of balance, what do you think at the LJ is the first step in assessing your current academic situation when you feel overwhelmed?
I think, with that is again like what I was saying earlier, right? We have those key indicators for ourselves when we know that we're out of balance. And one of the number one things that I actually wanted to point out, just to kind of add on, was listen to your body, right? If you feel tired,
Mm,
just take a rest, honestly. And we
right,
kind of also talked about this last week in our show for INC Radio Canada was that, you know, one of the things that you need to do is listen to your body because that is the number one indicator. Even like your gut feeling is also one of the things that will tell you that, hey, you need to slow down, because
Mhm.
you can only take so much at a time. And I know sometimes it's hard to say no to certain things, whether this could be academically or even just in life in general, right? And yeah, I feel like listening to your body and knowing when you have those indicators that are going off that, hey, you need to take a step back, is the first thing that to actually assess that that you feel overwhelmed. Ikaw.
Mhm. Um, so you know how I am with planning out my schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always the type of person to try my very best to stay organized, because I feel like if I don't have my calendar planned out or my to-do list um completed and set up, I feel like everything's like out of balance, but also I feel like I'm not properly
Prepared.
prepared. Yeah,
Mm.
preparing myself for whatever it is that I need to do. And so my first step in assessing my academic situation would be actually looking at my schedule. And so the way that my schedule is outlined, actually, it's structured in a lot of different ways. I have different to do lists. So I have a specific to do list for school. Then I have a specific to do list for the day. And then I have my calendar schedule where I block out what I actually need to do. So, for example, if today I needed to do schoolwork, rather than listing my list of things that I need to do for school, on my calendar, I set a period of time that I'm going to be working on my school stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
my calendar is used for blocking out time. And then I have my separate thing that I need to do for the day, and then just my list of assignments in general. But what my calendar does for me is it helps me to assess where I'm actually putting in my time because of the way that I label it. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever I need to do is labeled. So if it's a lecture, if it's a lab, if it's study, but the most important thing is if it's church, if it's a
Mm-hmm.
meeting, if it's personal, and I that helps me to see visually, okay, like am I just doing too much for school and not enough with spending personal time with my loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
or it helps me to see if I'm doing too much of anything,
Yeah.
because
So it's basically, you're basically painting like an entire scenario of what your entire day looks like, basically.
yes,
On
what I
a like,
actually
you look at the bigger picture
yes,
instead
yes,
of like.
yes. So it helps me to see not just what it is that's going on for the month, but like labeling it exactly, like what aspect of
Mm-hmm.
my life is this school, is this church, is this personal, and
Mm-hmm.
so that helps me to identify any parts of my life where I might be overcommitting, or any parts of my life that need more time,
Yeah.
because there are moments when we get busy. Our
No,
life
for
is
sure.
always
For sure.
going to be perfectly balanced. There's going to be instances when we have less time to hang out with our friends, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
There are moments when you have more time. And so it's important for us to really look at our schedules and assess that, so that way we can determine the parts of our lives where we are putting our time into, and how that affects us and how that influences our academic situation.
Mm-hmm. And I like that you have that kind of you know um skill, right? Because sometimes even some people, they just have a to-do list of everything that they need to do, but they don't separate it into sections in their life. And that's a really good point, because sometimes we just need to identify also which things are going to be like a stressor to us, right?
Right.
Something like, oh, like, is it this one class that you need to spend more time, or can I spend less time on this class, right? So there are things where you can basically, I think looking at the bigger picture really, really does help to be
Yeah.
able to identify which things are going to cause stress, or which things can be given more time or less time, right?
Yeah.
And
And it
some, yeah, go ahead,
Oops,
go ahead.
add it helps you identify when you need a sweet treat.
Yeah, exactly. Or where you can squeeze in a nap. So,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, maybe you know what? I did too much. I was so productive. I deserve a nap. I deserve whatever, a coffee. I deserve.
hmm Exactly. But anyways, tapering to our next question is, how do you evaluate whether your goals are aligned with your values? Ayan. Ikaw, Ate Angelica.
I think it's mainly really just reflecting on what the goals are, the steps to achieve those goals, and seeing whether those actually align with your personal values. Like you want to make sure that by achieving those goals, you still feel connected with who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're not sacrificing any of your core values just to achieve your goals.
Exactly. And I think also I want to point out for that one is that don't compare yourself to others as well, right?
Mhm.
Staying true to yourself, like what Angelica said, right? We have to stay true to ourselves with our goals because you're in your own timeline.
Right.
Always remember that. You're never trying to, I guess the word is sabay in Tagalog, but you're not trying to keep up with everybody else, right? You don't feel like you need to have that pressure of like, oh, Angelica is already getting this far and I'm still over here and she's already over here. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
don't try to compare yourself because that's when kind of where your values kind of go out the window because you're like, okay, well, I have to keep up with her because she's already ahead of me.
Right.
So you're not staying true to yourself when it comes to your goals and to the values that you hold up for yourself, right? But
And I think just to add on to that, one of the things I have been experiencing is I'm in this cycle where I'm preparing to apply for full-time roles
mm-hmm,
because I'm graduating soon, and it's so important that just because let's just say you have the same major as someone doesn't mean you're headed towards the same direction or you're heading towards the same goal career. You should
mm-hmm,
focus on what you're
exactly.
passionate about, what you like to do, because there's so many opportunities out there that you shouldn't limit yourself to what your peers are interested in. Because at the end of the day, pursuing what other people are interested in is not going to be fulfilling to you. So it's really important to prioritize what your goals are and what your passions are because that's what ultimately is going to help you to have a fulfilling career in the future.
Exactly. And sometimes what we also need to do is just reevaluate our goals. Because
Mhm.
sometimes there are times where we can actually outgrow the goals that we have set for ourselves, right? Sometimes you might have ended up in a different path, or you might have taken a different class that could take you to a better path, right? And sometimes those are things that we just need to reevaluate. And if your goals don't fit your values or of who you are anymore, then maybe it's time to let go of those certain goals and rethink of new ones. And sometimes it's just, you just need to find a newfound inspiration. And again, having rest and, balancing all of these things can be hard, but at the end of the day, it's worth it as long as you're sticking to what you believe in and your values. Diba? So.
Mhm.
And I think we're pretty much almost our discussion, and time is going by super fast. But we have the last two questions that I think we can quickly answer. But what are
Mhm.
some practical steps for rebuilding your academic life after you feel like you're burnt? After feeling burnt out. Ayan. Ikaw, Ate Joca.
I think it would have to be for rebuilding, it would have to be the two parts of my life where I feel like I neglect the most if I'm burnt out is like yourself, taking care of yourself. So, and also your social life. So I think for me, rebuilding my academic life after feeling burnt out has to start with actually taking care of myself, actually sleeping, eating healthy, exercising, doing things to relax, and then socially reaching out to people, having conversations with people, but not just having conversations and spending time with people, but also having meaningful conversations that can help me get some direction towards actually rebuilding. So maybe seeking advice from people like academic advisors for us as students or any friends that we can seek help from. How about you?
Ayun. I love that you mentioned academic advisor because I was going to mention it as well. I love going to my academic
Hmm.
advisor and just student services in university because they really helped a lot. And especially if you're new to post-secondary education, take advantage of those resources that you have at the university because those things can actually help you not get to that stage in your academic life where you feel burnt out. But one of the things that I actually wanted to say for that question was have get rest, have intentional rest. So like, how Angelica was mentioning how she looks at, her overall schedule, input there where you can have that time for self-care, to take rest. And I think one of the things that you can start with resting is intentional rest, meaning rest without feeling that guilt that you need to rest, right? Again, you have to listen to your body. You need to tell whatever your gut is telling you, hey, you need to slow down. Then that's what you need to do. Because sometimes if you're giving only 10% out of the 100%, then, where's that 90%? It's nowhere, because you feel tired, you feel unmotivated, right? In order for us to feel 100%, is that we need to take those rests, we need to take those intentional rests in order to feel that 100%. And anything that you do in your academic life, whether it's academically or again just life in general, I think, if you feel like your 100% self, it'll also reflect in all of the things that you do in your life, especially in your schoolwork. But our last question for today is, what role does our faith play when it comes to rebalancing our priorities in life, especially as a student? Ikaw muna, Angelica.
I think for me, it's really about peace. I think that even in moments when I feel overwhelmed, just because I know that I have my faith and I know that I can rely on God, no matter what happens or no matter how chaotic my life can be, I still feel that level of peace because I know that God will be there with me through everything that I experience, whether it's, moments when I feel like I'm able to be successful, or even moments when I have my hardships and my own struggles. And also, I think faith also gives us such a different perspective in comparison to other students or our peers, because for us, we have that perspective where we can rely on God. And also, like, it helps us to put our academic pressures in a way where we view it as something that will help us to grow, not necessarily something that will hinder us. Because I
Mm-hmm.
think that for us as students, in any hardships that we face, we view it as moments when we can rely on God further and moments when we can grow in our faith. So it changes our perspective from negative to positive, basically, because we have our faith.
Exactly. And you know what? The one of the things that, that I love about being a member inside the church is that, we have certain activities like CBI or
Yeah.
even CFO activities that cater for us students, but also, right, it also reminds us that, we have other brethren that we can also rely on and help with regards to our academic life. And, we have that right and calling to be able to pray to our Almighty God. And, faith also gives us our purpose. It keeps us grounded, right? And also gives us that confidence to be able to face whatever, hindrance or whatever challenge we have in our academic life.
Now let's go off into our Christian value takeaway. So, as Christians, it's important to stay disciplined in how we manage our academic responsibilities. Reconstructing our academic equilibrium means prioritizing what truly matters: our studies, our personal growth, and ultimately our relationship with God. By keeping God at the center of our academic pursuits, we can ensure that our efforts align with His purpose for our lives and that we aren't distracted or overwhelmed by the pressures that we face as students.
And of course, in a world filled with constant academic demands and distractions, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. And taking time to reassess and realign our academic goals allows us to place our trust in God's guidance. And ultimately, by practicing self discipline in our studies, we bring glory to our Almighty God and ensuring that our education serves His purpose while keeping and putting first our commitment to serving Him.
As we wrap up today's episode, we'd like to give our thanks to you, our lovely viewers. Thank you for joining us in this episode today, and we hope to see you in our next episode so that we can all keep growing in faith, one INCRadio podcast episode at a time.
And as always, we would love to hear from all of you. So please continue to reach out to us for any comments, questions, or suggestions via email at podcast@incradio.net. Because here on INC Radio Podcast, we're
We're
here to hear.
here.
Thank you, everybody. See you next
Bye,
episode.
everybody.
Said, listen now. Let's have some fun, and this is how. As we have our INC radio podcast playing, we will have so much fun listening. INC Radio Podcast, we're here to hear.
Your Spotify playlist just got more exciting and inspiring because the INC Original Music is now on Spotify. Search up INC Original Music and discover songs about our faith and love, songs for our family and friends, songs full of hope, songs that keep us going. Add them all up to your favorite Spotify playlist. You can explore uplifting INC Original Music in a variety of styles and genres. Share your INC Original Music playlist to your friends. It's now even easier to share our faith and much easier to uplift ourselves and others through Christian music.